in your language paper 1, you've done question 1, that was nice and easy, got 4 marks. Done question 2, which if you follow the processes is not too tricky, and then question 3 comes and it blows people's minds. It's the one people hate, okay? But if you follow the tips I'm going to show you in this video, and if you follow the approaches that I'm going to show you exactly how to do, you'll be utterly fine. Okay, so we're on to question 3 now. The question 3 is the bane of everyone's life. It seems to be a terror to people, okay? But let's look at the positives. This is the only question that we know literally word for word what it's going to say, okay? The only bit will change is this bit, because it might be from the opening or the middle or the end of the novel, but this bit does not change. How has the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader, okay? Now there's 2 things we want to draw our attention to before we get started. First of all, this is about the whole of the source, okay? So we've got to show about how the source works together. So how does the source work together to interest us as a reader? Now, if you think about things that interest you, your favourite film, favourite book, favourite movie, whatever it might be, you are interested because it makes you feel something. You maybe feel fear, terror, anxiety, love, concern, compassion, empathy, sympathy. You feel something. So how does the source work together to make us feel a certain way? Okay? That is essentially what our question is asking us. Okay? Now, the vast majority of students go into this question and they will say, in the beginning the writer does this and it makes me feel like this. In the middle the writer does this and it makes me feel like this. By the end the writer does this and it makes me feel like this. That's not considering the whole source. That's just breaking it into chunks and almost giving a commentary of each of those chunks, what it's actually doing. Okay? If you want to get into the top part of the mark scheme here, you've got to be showing how the whole thing works together. And I'm going to give you 2 ways to do that. Okay, and these are the 2 ways that I would be adopting when it comes to question 3. Okay, now I'm going to need the whole text for this, so here it is. Okay, step 1 is we look at the start and we look at the end. Now there is no science to this. Okay, there is nothing determines where the start starts and the end starts. I'm just going to do the first couple of sentences, okay? So I'm going to have that as my start, and then I'm going to look at the end. So once again, I'm going to have the last couple of sentences, okay? Now, I'm going to look at the start, I'm going to look at the end. Now, this start and this end will only be one of 2 things. It will either be cyclical or it will be an epiphany. A cyclical structure is one where the start reflects the end. So they come back to the same point, okay? An epiphany structure is where there is a clear difference, okay? Something has broken and therefore there's been a clear change, okay? It's going to be one of those 2 things. So let's have a look-see. When he woke in the woods in the dark and the cold of the night, he'd reach out to touch the child sleeping beside him. Nights dark beyond darkness and the days more grey than each one that would have gone before, like the onset of some cold glaucoma dimming away the world. Now let's look at the end. Along the shore, a burden of dead reeds. Are you okay? He said. The boy nodded. Then they set out along the blacktop in the gunmetal light, shuffling through the ash, each the other world's entire. Well, let's have a look. We've got a child here. We've got a child here. We've got a grey environment, and then we talk about gunmetal light. That's grey, isn't it? So we've got here, I'm quite happy that the start is similar to the end, and therefore this is a cyclical structure. So now my next thought is, if this story is going in a cycle, how does that reflect these characters? How does that reflect what is going on? Well, for me, that shows they're trapped in a cycle of despair, trapped in a cycle of disappointment, trapped in a cycle of poverty, and therefore they're unable to break free from that despair and that poverty. But let's also look at it in a positive way. The father and the son are together at the start. The father and the son are together at the end. So we could also say they're in an unbreakable cycle of love, compassion, and protection of each other. Okay? Let's get right in then. So, scary lines. Scariest bit is when there's lines, so let's put something on it. McCarthy. Once again, we start with the writer's name. We always start with the writer's name. McCarthy McCarthy, we're going to talk about the start first, okay? So in our point, we're going to establish what the structures method is, and we're going to therefore talk about the start. McCarthy immediately establishes in the beginning that the father protects the son. I'll put my quote in. For he'd reach out lost my line. There we go. Reach out to touch the child sleeping beside him. Okay, so we've made our point, which just like question 2, where we identified the method, we are once again identifying the method. And the method that we are identifying is the beginning. Okay, really not complicated, really nice and simple. Okay, then we put our evidence. Now this is not rich evidence. Question 2, we were finding evidence that had metaphors, similes, alliteration, etc. in it. This does not have any of those things in it. It reach out to such a child sleep beside him. That's just a bog standard statement. We don't care. We're not going to talk about language in this question. It does the job perfectly. Now, there's 2 things I now need to explain. I need to explain how it's been used at the start, okay? And then after that, I'm going to explain how it's been used at the end, okay? At the end of our paragraph, we're then going to talk about the effect, so how it makes us feel or think, okay? Now you'll see that when we go on to step 2, the same structure is adopted. We do exactly the same thing again, okay? Point, evidence, explained at the start, explained at the end, and then the effect about how what it feel or what we think, okay? So, McCarthy immediately establishes in the beginning that the father protects the son through reach out to touch the child sleeping beside him. Let's talk about how it's used at the start then. So, the writer uses the start to establish the love and compassion the father has for his son. So we're comforted the vulnerable boy has protection in this daunting world. If you'd read the rest of the text, you would see that it's about like the apocalypse and the world is ended. But don't worry, because this son has still got his dad. Okay? Then we're going to go to the end. This is part of a cyclical structure. Now the examiner's loving it, because now I'm talking about the whole of the source. This is part of a cyclical structure for the boy is still being protected by the dad. Again, let's pop our evidence in. Let's put that nice last little bit there. It says, there we go. Are you okay? He said. Nice and simple. Are you okay? Change that to a semicolon, and then I could put that's my question mark in the sentence there. So this is part of a cyclical structure for the boy still being protected by the dad. Semicolon means adding on to the next bit. Are you okay? So this cycle of love shows how the affection and protection cannot be broken. Because just like the text, they are in a cycle of love and a cycle of affection. But it also shows, so however, it also shows the cycle of darkness and fear is also inescapable. Okay, so if I was going to make this very, very clear for us, we've got our point here, we're identifying the method. We've got our evidence here, where we've ticked that off. Then we'll break this bit for you guys to make it nice and clear, those two parts there. So first of all, we explain how it's been used at the start, and then we explain how it's been used at the end. The last thing we then need to do is we need to talk about how the effect it has on the readers. How does it make me think or feel? So for me, if I know that they've got this father is looking after the kid at the start and the father is looking at the kid at the end, I'm all right, I'm happy, I'm relieved for them, but I'm also afraid that seems to be the only two that exist in this post-apocalyptic world. So the writer is therefore conflicted between ease that the two characters have each other but also concern that is all they have in this daunting environment. Okay, so there's my effect. So a little bit messy there, I apologise for that, but there is step one. Step one, fairly simple. We looked at the start and we looked at the end, start and end. We've worked out that there was something in common between the start and the end, so we decided this was a cyclical structure. We made the point that McCarthy had used the beginning and put the evidence. We talked about how we felt at the beginning, how the writer had used the beginning to shape how we think or feel. We then jumped to the end, mentioned the fact it was a cyclical structure, put in our evidence, talked about how the end had been used, and then talked about how that structural choice made us think or feel. That is talking about how the source works together as a whole to make us feel a certain way. Happy days. Okay, so now we come to step two. Step two is about looking at the rest of the text. So we talked about the start and the end, and now we're going to look at how a symbol is used throughout the text. Now, as I read through this text, I'm finding there is a symbol of light being used time and again. Okay, so I'll use my red pen so it sticks out. We've got the dark and the cold of the night, so we've got a lack of light there. Then as we read on, we've got the first grey light, he rose, so we've got a grey light now appearing. Then as we move on, it was light enough, when it was light enough to see, use the binoculars, he glassed the valley below, so it's getting even brighter. Now it's light to the point of danger, okay, because in here, now it's saying he could be seen. They could be seen from the road, now it was day. They could be seen from the road, now it was day. So we can see here, as we move through our text, that we've got this symbol of light, and as we move through, the light is getting brighter and stronger to the point of danger. Okay, so once again, that is a structural choice that is run throughout the text that makes us think or feel a certain way. So let's roll with that one. Let's get that out of the way, and let's get back to our answer. Okay, we are going to follow the exact same method. Okay, so I'm just going to pop that just there for us so we can see it nice and clearly. Okay, so furthermore, the writer uses, and this is called symbolic development. The writer uses symbolic development of the light throughout the text. Okay, so once again, we have identified the methods. That is the method being used, symbolic development. Then we put our evidence. This is shown. Now this is where we've got to be a little bit awkward because we've got 3 bits of evidence we need to pop in here, okay? Because we've got to show how the symbol changes as we move through. So this is shown, and look how short I make these. This is shown through the opening being in the dark and the cold of the night before a first grey light, and by the end they could be seen from the road. Now it was day. Okay? Can you see that I've just taken the 3 little snippets of evidence? Again, they're not rich, they're not pretty, not fancy, we do not care. Okay? So, I've got my point, I've got my evidence. Now, I'm ready to explain how it's used at the start. So, light is always a universal symbol of hope. It doesn't matter what you're doing in English, when there is light, there is hope. Okay? So, this lack of light at the start symbolizes the lack of hope for the 2 characters, and therefore, let's think about ourselves as a reader, and therefore we're concerned for their safety. Then by the middle, we've got a little bit of light. It's grey, but we've got a little bit of light. The growth of the light symbolises the growth of the hope they have, for they have each other, and a desire to keep going. So we've talked about how it's been used at the start, and we sort of seeped into the middle a little bit. Now we're going to talk about how it's used at the end, okay? By the end, the light is so great that it puts them in danger, because now they can be seen, puts them in danger. Therefore, we see how the hope of their unity can also bring threat and vulnerability, as well as a chance of success and safety. So we've shown our examiner how that light has been used throughout the start, from the start, middle to the end. We've talked about how that light has therefore given us quite a double-edged sword towards the end. We've talked about how throughout our text, the text as a whole is shifting our thoughts and feelings about these characters. So by the end, we feel that they're going to be successful, we feel they're going to have a chance of success, but we also know that they're in danger, they're at risk. I then end it by thinking about the effect. So how does it make us feel? This shifts the reader's emotions throughout the text from initial despair and concern to a more cautious optimism for the character's safety. Nice and simple. Okay, so we've got here now step 1 and step 2 of question 2. Okay, two very simple, I think, two simple ways of accessing an awful lot of those 8 marks. In both of these cases, we've talked about how the writer has used the whole text to shift and shape how we feel. Both approaches followed the same point, evidence, explain, start, explain, end, and effect structure. This one was nice and straightforward because all we did was look at the start and look at the end. And this one was nice and straightforward because all we did was, when we read through it, we just found a symbol that ran throughout it, and then we just wrote it up. Okay, so I think that's a far better, far more thoughtful way of approaching question 3, and therefore far more likely to get some solid marks. Let's have a quick, brief little look at our mark scheme just to make sure. Here we go. So exactly the same as with the language question, we are looking for perceptive detail. Perceptive is unique and personal to you. Detail, it carries, it goes into depth. It doesn't just offer one single idea. Well, the way we've gone about it: have we analysed the effect of writer's choice of structural features? Yes, we have. Have we selected a range of judicious examples? Yes, we've got 4 different pieces of evidence, 3 for this one, 1 for that one. That's a range of judicious examples. Have we made sophisticated and accurate use of subject terminology? Yes. We've talked about symbolic development effectively and correctly. Yes. We've talked about cyclical structure effectively and correctly. We've got it all here. We've got it all ready for a really solid answer. Okay. And as I say, remember, you are competing with the majority of the country that will go at the start, the writer does this and I feel like this. By the middle, the writer does this and I feel like this. By the end, the writer does this and I feel like this. You are not doing that. You're better than that.